Hey everybody, welcome back. Stephen here, Northwest Small Batch Brewing. It is that time. It is time for another full brew day. That's right. I'm making another beer for the month, and I've been on a kick, a lager kick. And lately, I have been doing a lot of dry hopping as opposed to doing any kind of late additions or even like, I don't even bother with 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute additions. Don't do it. So here's what we're doing on this one. This is a Czech amber lager. Which I haven't made before. So I'm going to do a Czech amber lager, but I'm going to do something interesting here. I'm going to add plum at the very end. I'll get to how I'm going to do that when I get to that. But what I'm looking for, or my goal, my hope, is that I have a nice, crisp, clean amber lager with just a hint of plum that doesn't overpower the fact that it's a lager and that it's still crystal clear. That's my hope. At any rate, let me go through it with you. I'm expecting this to be a 1049 original gravity, 1010 final, which would give it a 5.2% ABV at the end. 12.4 SRM for the color, so it's not going to be a really like dark lager, although it is an amber. IBUs are also low, 24 IBUs, but it's a lager, so you don't want something super bitter or it's not really going to be a lager, is it? All right, here we go. So the grain bill, let's get started with that, shall we? This one, I'll tell you, this is interesting because I had a little bit of trouble finding a good recipe for this. And I went through, the BJ guidelines, to see what the best option was, requirements wise. And then I went through all kinds of books that I had. I went through the Apartment Brewer, I think, has a Czech amber lager. I looked at his recipe. Martin Keane has a recipe. So I looked at a bunch of recipes just to see how it lined up with what I was thinking. And I am doing something different. I feel like these should be a Vienna malt. That's just my opinion. None of the others did use that, so that will make mine a little different. 80% of this malt bill is going to be Vienna malt. That's your base malt. And I am going to throw in, on top of the Vienna, Pilsner malt. So 80% Vienna, 12% Pilsner malt. On top of that, the adjuncts, there aren't many, and that's the way it should be, in my opinion. 5% Caramunich Type 1. 2% Melanoidin. Sorry, I always pronounce that wrong. Melanoidin. The point of the Melanoidin is that if you're not going to do like back in the old days, you would take some of the wort out while it was while you were like boiling it. You would boil it separately or mashing it and like kind of boil it down almost to a syrup and then basically add it back. Anyway, that's to replace this. That's not really done anymore, but you can add Melanoidin malt to kind of mimic that a little bit. And last but not least, 1% Carafa III is also going to go into this bad boy. Hops. We'll get to hops, but I'm going to be using Saaz hops. I've said before, I'm down to a 100% single bittering hop for the entire 60-minute boil with no other hops. So it's going to be about, I'm planning to add just over an ounce of Saaz hops. We'll see what alpha acid they have come in on. I may have to adjust that. Other than that, I'll be adding the ubiquitous Whirlfloc tablets when it gets to that point, the yeast nutrient. I do have some plum puree that I'll be using. And we're going to be using Diamond Lager yeast from LalBrew on this one. So I've got all the grain weighed out. I'm going to go ahead and mill it up. Some people like to double mill. Honestly, I haven't been doing that. I just haven't seen enough difference that I feel like it's worth my time and effort. Plus, it creates a lot of extra dust in the air. Gets in my lungs. I don't like it. So I'm sticking to the one and done. I do set my mill to the tightest setting though, because I do have a brew in the bag and I really don't need to worry about having it milled too finely. All right, so I've got my setup all plugged in and ready to go. I've got my strike water filled up and heated to my strike temperature. And I'm going to be mashing in here at 147 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you have been watching my videos for a while, that is kind of my standard. It does tend to cause the beers to be a little bit drier. And may end up with a slightly lower final gravity than what I'm, trying to aim for. But I kind of like it. I like it that way. It's a personal preference. So that is what I am mashing at, and it has worked well for me. Okay, so those of you who know me know that I do an overnight mash. So I let it sit overnight, as I usually do, at 147 degrees. It is morning time, and it is time to drain the main grain. So I'm going to drain the grain. I like to use a pot lid to try to squeeze as much liquid out of the grain as I can, because that grain really does absorb a lot of your beer. And then I will pull that off, and it will be time for first wort hops. What is first? Almost said something wrong there. What is first wort hops? I've talked about it in previous videos. Basically, it just means you're tossing in your hops before the boil. So as soon as the grain basket is off, while I'm starting to heat up the wort to a boil, I put in my hop basket, my hop spider, and I toss in my 60-minute addition before the boil starts. Supposedly, it gives it a more rounded, smoother bittering for the beer. Honestly, I think that that's debatable. I'm not sure that you can really tell a difference, but at the same time, nobody's really ever said that they could find any, negative aspects to adding your hops a little early like that. And especially with the condensation lid that I use, it makes it a lot easier. I don't have to lift, that condensation lid to add more hops anytime during the boil. So, add the hops, bringing it up to a boil, putting on the lid, and we'll be back in an hour. Whirlfloc for the homies. All right, it's been an hour. You saw me add the Whirlfloc. I usually let it cool down a bit and get a little reading to see where I'm at, see if I need to top off at all, where I hit on the numbers. And it is time to cool it down. I don't know if I talked about this, but there's no dry hops or secondary hops in this one. It is strictly a bittering hop. That's it, period. End of story. I am going to be adding the plum puree and yeast nutrient later on, though. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up, seal the kettle up, and as I do, I'm going to let it chill overnight, and I'll be back in the morning after that chill is done to transfer the beer and finish it up. All right, so it's the last day of brewing for me. It is the morning, and my beer is at, room temperature, ambient temperature. However, this is a lager, so here's how this is going to work. I'm going to go ahead and transfer the beer into my fermenter that I have sanitized, of course. That'll be step one. So transferring it with my pump. Step two, this is a good time to add yeast nutrients. So I will add yeast nutrient. I will add some yeast nutrient per the instructions, whatever kind of yeast nutrient you are using. I like to use Fermade K because it has both the organic compounds and the diammonium phosphate, I believe it is. And then I also throw in, I've talked about it before, but White Labs makes a yeast nutrient that has zinc in it that I like a lot. So I put a little bit of that in there as well. And then I like to put that in the fermenter, not in the kettle. If you put it in the fermenter, you're not going to lose any of it. You put it in the kettle, there's always a little bit of, proteins and stuff in the bottom of the kettle that you just toss. And so I don't, might as well keep all of the yeast nutrient you spent so much money on in the fermenter. That and also I'm going to go ahead and aerate the wort at this point for about 2 or 3 minutes with my drill wand. And so that's a good time to add the yeast nutrients so it gets nice and homogenized and mixed in. Once that's done, I'm going to loosely put the top on and throw it into my Kegging. Well, I have a converted freezer. That's my temperature controlled fermentation chamber. I'm going to use that to bring the temperature of the wort down now that it's been all ready to go. All I need to do is add the yeast, really. But I want to wait until I get down to temperature. My preference, especially with this particular well, I can't talk today. This particular yeast is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what I like to ferment at for a lager, at least for this one. So I'm going to wait a couple hours for that wort to come down from room temperature to about 55 Fahrenheit. And then I'll be back to pitch the yeast. All right, it is time to pitch the yeast. As I had said a couple times here, I'm using the LalBrew Diamond Lager yeast. In this case, I don't see a reason to use more than 1 packet. Some people with lagers really feel 2 packets is the smart way to go. But I mean, you know, this is a 3.5 gallon batch I'm doing. So I think I'm probably fine with just 1 packet of yeast. And these days with the tariffs, those yeast packets are getting more and more expensive. So, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. So anyway, I will be back towards the end of fermentation. The last week fermentation, I usually slowly ramp up the beer to about 75. Not instantly, I slowly ramp it up to 75, so I don't want to stress the yeast. So give it that diacetyl rest for the last week or so, which will be like the 4th week of fermentation that I do. So I'll be back after that. All right, so the beer has been fermenting nicely for quite a while, almost a month, and it is time. You know, I moved it over to the I moved it over to the kegerator. I put it on CO2, cold crashed it under pressure. It is time to do a couple things. First thing is I need to kill the yeast because I'm going to be adding a little bit of the plum. Now, if I add the plum puree, it's just going to, either I have to keep the beer cold so it doesn't, you know, so the fermentation stays pretty lagged out, or it's just going to re-ferment and dry out. It won't have that plum flavor. It'll just have more alcohol. Anyway, I don't want to do that. That's not what I'm aiming for. So I'm going to start by killing the yeast. There's a couple of chemicals I'm going to use. One of them is Campton. One of them is a Campton tablet. Well, I really can't talk this week. And the other one I think is, I'm not sure. I'll put it up on the screen. I can never remember. And I'll put up the ratio that you're supposed to use in order to basically stop the yeast from being able to ferment. You could do it other ways, like you could pasteurize, but I mean, I don't want to pasteurize this entire batch of beer. And I have never done this, so I'm hoping it works pretty well for me, this killing of the yeast. We'll find out, because I'm going to can some of this, and we'll find out whether or not those cans explode, you know, in the next few months. At any rate, let's get to the plum puree. So, yeast is dead, right? It's been a few days or whatever, and I'm going to add the yeast puree. Now, like I said, I don't want this to be overpowering. I'm using this, it's called Aerate puree. It's for beer, champagne, sangria, wine, margarita. It's all on the side here. Must be. It does somewhere tell you, maybe I have to open the package, but it does give you a suggested ratio, and it comes with this pump. Now, I'll be honest with you, this doesn't look like a puree to me. Although it says craft puree on the side of it. I mean, this looks like juice, not puree. I hope it's concentrated. I've never used this, like I say. It does say shake, so maybe that's why it doesn't look, you know, too puree-y. I don't know. Let's see. Filtered, shelf-stable, la 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 la. Let's see. Usage guide. It comes with a pump. It says for, it says 1 to 3 ounces per gallon. 1 to 3 ounces per gallon. So I guess I'm not going to use the pump because I don't know what the heck the pump. You could use the pump if you're doing smaller amounts, I guess. So probably I'm going to use the stick with the 1 ounce per gallon. Like I said, I want this to be just gentle plum flavor. I don't want to be overpowering. And if I find that that is not enough, if I taste it and I want more, I can certainly add more anytime I want, right? So that's what I'm going to try. I won't use this whole thing, I don't think, but that'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I'll be back in a week, and we'll give it a taste. Well, hey everybody, finally made it to the end. I didn't do a pour cam this time. I'm just tired today, so that's the way it goes. I did make a little mess up here. I added the puree at the end before taking a reading, and so I don't have a final reading because that would have thrown it off. All I can look at is what I expected it to be, and since it started at 1050, expected 1049, this is somewhere around 5 to 5.3%. Should be. Woo! Some plum there. So, interestingly enough, I mean, it had about a pinky finger of head retention, and it quickly disappeared like that. Boy, these things like fly by. I cannot remember if I put any oats in this, because that would usually help with the head retention. I may not have. It's hot today. Hot. So this glass is condensated. Anyway, there's lots of condensation on the glass. And it is clear as far as, you know, the beer goes. However, it's kind of a darker color, but it is an amber lager, right? I can absolutely smell the plum. So here's what I did. There's plenty. It looks like there's plenty of carbonation. So I read the ingredients on the plum puree and, or not the ingredients, the recommended dosage. And for the amount of beer I made, it recommended actually more than that one bottle. And I was thinking I was just going to put like one squirt in, but I followed the recommendation, and it may bite me in the ass here. We'll see. I put the entire bottle in, yesterday, I think. The aroma is nice. That plum flavor is, you can smell it, that's for sure. Okay, I need to sit with this for a second. I got a couple thoughts. Number one is, I don't hate it. I will say on the first sip, it's too sweet. The plum puree made it too sweet. Meaning, that full bottle was too much. That was too much. Maybe half that bottle would have been, and that's what I should have done. I mean, in hindsight, I should have done less because you can always add more. But that full bottle was too much. That definitely made it too sweet. It doesn't taste like, it doesn't taste bad. It doesn't taste artificial because I think it's actually real plum. But, and what I really like about it is the plum is on the finish. You don't get it right away. You get some sweetness, and then towards the end, you're like, oh, there's some plum on the end. So I would use half a bottle in this case because, like I said, I was going for a Czech amber lager that just had a hint of plum in it. I didn't want to overpower it, so that's the problem. It's not balanced. If I drank this like it is now, I don't think I would know that this is an amber lager. There's no bite to it that you want from it, like you'd get from a normal amber beer. It's just the sweetness cuts right through the bite. And, you know, I didn't use a lot of hops. I used Saaz, obviously, because it's a Czech lager. But that's not really coming through. Like I said, the plum is just overpowering it. It's not too much, though. I don't know how to explain this. It's not so much that it feels like, you know, cloyingly sweet. It's just that it's overpowering the amber side of this beer, and so it's not a nice balance. It will get drunk up because it tastes good. It's just not what I was going for. So I will make a note if I decide to try this again or do something similar to this in the future. I would only use like half that bottle. Now, if this was a 5-gallon batch, this would probably be okay. But I generally do 3.5 gallons. And so I think that, you know, another gallon and a half would probably have fixed this. At any rate, it's not bad. I wish there was more head retention. I'll have to go back and look at the footage with you guys and see if I did add any oats or not. So something needs to be done to get the head retention to stick around a little bit longer. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it. I will can this up and send it out to some people and we'll see what they say. I'm gonna guess they'll probably agree with my thoughts on it as well. And anyway, I'll be back in another week with another video. I'll be back in about a month with a full brew video. I still have the occasional Sunday single malt videos. You know, whatever. Just, you know, if you're interested, check out my channel. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Cheers.